Rezoning application 21813 from a P2 to an RA. Here are some points for consideration. I'd like to walk you through the history of the P2 lands, provide you an overview of the errors that have been found in the land use bylaw, and provide you some evidence of the P2 land as it floods. We're hoping that some of these points will be consideration when looking at the rezoning of the P2 to a possible RA. Not too many people are familiar with how the P2 lands became P2. So let me walk you through a brief history. In 1986, the Halifax County mandated that there would be a land use strategy developed for the Eastern Passage Cowbay District. At the request of the Halifax County Municipality, Eastern Passage Ratepayers Association, and residents of the Public Participation Community Group was developed, and it was headed by Miss Valerie Spencer. She was a senior Halifax County planner. The group consisted of county planners along with knowledgeable residents. One of the challenges of this group was to deal with a piece of property that was located north of Silver Sands Beach. This land was prone to flooding. It included marshy bog. It was environmentally sensitive, and it had wetlands and ponds, and was also home to multiple species of birds and wildlife. After a review of the property's configuration, the preferred designation for this land would have been parkland, but the property was privately owned, and that designation could not be applied. The planner reviewed the zoning regulations and finally implemented a new P2 zone, which would allow for limited development. At the end, this is what was included in the land use bylaw. Before we dive deeper into the P2 lands, I want to talk about a few errors that were discovered in the land use bylaw once the application went through. So there are significant errors. In 2017, the plan of survey by HRM misidentified Osborne Lake as the barrier ponds. This error allowed the setback from the real barrier ponds in front of the P2 area to be reduced from 61 to 30 meters, allowing development further into the environmental conservation zone and wetlands. In the land use bylaw, an error went unnoticed by HRM. In section 4.18.1.a, whereby the word lake was missing, it read, within 61 meters of the ordinary high water mark of the Atlantic Ocean, Cowbay, and the barrier pond. It is unlikely that the intention was to put a 61-meter setback around all of Cowbay in its entirety. This error allowed the setback from the Cowbay Lake to be reduced from 61 meters to 30 meters. What this means is, if the P2 area is rezoned, it will allow development even closer to the ocean and the Cowbay Lake. Migration of the Cowbay Beach has been monitored by the federal government for several decades. Local residents have brought forward their issues and concerns. Those concerns and issues have not been properly documented by HRM, nor have they been mentioned in the plan of survey for any development in that area. One would hope that potential hazards would be documented, as it has an impact on those wishing to develop in this area. If we look at the significant migration between what's happening in these two pictures, so if you look at the first picture, you'll see that the Silver Sands Beach crest and barrier pond, this picture is dated August 12, 2017. It's a picture from the satellite image of Google Earth. You'll see that the beach crest is fairly straight. Now, look at the second picture. This is Silver Sands Beach crest and the barrier ponds. This is dated April 18, 2020. You will notice that there is significant movement inward. If we take this picture and look a little bit closer at the barrier ponds, it's interesting to note that as we look at these, images, the northernmost pond is getting larger as the southern pond is actually filling in from the beach migration process. The P2 area is prone to severe flooding, as it can be viewed in the coming slides. This flooding is not a new issue. It was identified as far back as 1978, but was certainly escalated in the most recent years. Why have there been no floodplains identified in the plan of survey? Why was there no 25 to 50 to 100-year flood projection completed? The P2 area has been prone to flooding due to its location, elevation to the Atlantic Ocean, and the Cow Bay Lake. The concern here is that HRM planning has never identified these floodplains, and nor have they updated the environmental constraints map. This oversight may represent a safety hazard to people moving into the area that are unaware of the severe flooding issue. In this picture, you will see what the Cow Bay Silver Sands beach looks like during a normal day. Take special note of the beach crest and the two barrier ponds that has the service road found in between. In the next two slides that you'll see, it will show significant flooding during storm surges or coastal flooding. This is another picture taken from Hurricane Dorian, September 8th, 2019, and you'll see that the storm surge level was only slightly less to that which was experienced during Hurricane Juan in 2003. Notice again that the barrier ponds and the service roads are completely submerged in this picture.
In this video, we'll see the wave action movement landward into the P2 zone. You'll see that the land, the barrier pond, the beach crest is fully submerged.
This picture, you'll notice the barrier ponds area and beyond are totally flooded during coastal flood event in March 2018. Notice the waves washing over the beach crest into the Cow Bay Lake. This is a satellite image of the P2 area, which abuts the Cow Bay Lake. The area circled in red is part of the P2 property, which also floods during storm surges. So here it is on a normal day. You'll see where the red star is. This is part of the P2 land. This is what it normally would look like. Here's the same area in parcel of land. Note the red star. You will see that this P2 land is submerged. This was a storm event that occurred in March of 2018. When the Atlantic Ocean experiences a storm surge event, the Cow Bay Lake level will also reflect the same surge, as it is in sync with the ocean.
In this section, we're going to talk about LiDAR radar. LiDAR radar is an instrument utilized to produce a very accurate coastal flood risk maps.
In this picture, you'll notice a red line dividing the property. The P2 area is located to the left, and the RA area is located to the right of this line. This is significant as we look at storm surge levels as they relate to past events.
Here I will demonstrate the flood level at 0 meters. At this level, you'll notice the beach crest and the two barrier ponds, and also the P2 lands. Now, allow me to take you up to the 2.1 meters. This value comes from Hurricane Juan and the storm level. Pay close attention to the P2 lands. Now, allow me to bring you up to this 3.8 storm surge. Which is a combination of the 2.1 plus a 1.7 meter wave run-up. once again have a look at the P2 land and how it's impacted. This data came from the Halifax Harbour Extreme Water Level documentation, produced by the Geological Survey of Canada, open file 6346. The 3.8 meter storm surge data was collected from Sheltered Cove in the Halifax Harbour. However, here in Cow Bay, we are exposed to deep water wave action. It's important to note that during Hurricane Juan, offshore from Halifax, the average wave height was roughly 9 meters, with wave peaks reaching 19 meters. The reality is that Cow Bay Beach is fully exposed to deep water wave action, with no shelter from lands or land masses. It would be more reasonable to suggest that the wave run-up would be in the order of 2.5 meters, where there is no protection from deep water wave action. Let me show you what 4.6 meters would look like. Again, take note of the P2 lands. This graphic shows an overlay of the SA P2 area at a 4.6 meter flood zone. Homes developed in this area could be exposed to flooding with every storm surge event.
In the next few slides, we're going to talk about storm surges and the Armour Rock. In this picture, you will see the armored rock wall located to the east end of Silver Sands Beach. On a calm day with no storm surge, you can see that the armored rock wall along the roadside is roughly 9 feet. On the beach side, the armored rock wall is roughly 18 to 21 feet above sea level. During a storm surge, when there's no wind, the ocean will look exactly as it does in these pictures. In the next few slides, you'll see the power of the wave run-up and how it pushes up, over, and even sometimes through the armored rock wall, causing damage. In this picture, waves are going over the beach as a result of the wave run-up. Even with the rock wall, there is significant damage from continuous pounding. Further, you'll see that guardrails along the road have been washed out several times in past years. If HRM approves development in the P2 zone, they also need to understand the magnitude of a rock wall that will be required to protect those homes. Now let's have a look at the municipal planning strategy. Here is the municipal planning strategy. Take a moment to read. The interpretation of this EP2 basically states there can be no development without a proper study that demonstrates that the area is not hazardous to development. To the community's knowledge, there has been none completed to date. Another key piece that needs to be considered is the application, the developer, and the future intentions. Key things that were shown in the application, in the original application, is that the P2 line is actually in a flood zone. The rezoning is going to devastate and destroy remaining wetlands. The developer is not a community member and does not have a stake in the well-being of the community. Another important question that the community would like to know is this property part of a bigger plan to subdivide the lands into more parcels, more development, and more properties? Is this rezoning from a P2 to an RA simply the first hurdle? The last thing that we want to bring your attention to is Lower Chesuncook and the damaged berm. This is a parallel situation that occurred in 2018. In 2018, as covered in the media, there was a powerful storm surge in early January that ripped a hole in the stone berm, allowing the big lake to fill with seawater. Local residents said the lake was infilling with salt water with the rise and fall of each tide. This was putting their homes in danger. The three options were $9.4 million. That was a full repair to the entire bream, roughly about 1.3 kilometers. Option number 2 was 6.3 million, and that was a slightly lower dike of 4.5 meters. The third option was 600,000, and that was to only repair the breach. Now, if we compare this, and this is why it's so important, is that the Silver Sands beach is approximately 1.1 kilometers. If we were to build a bream that would protect the P2 zone and land in there or potential homes, we would be looking in and around the same cost. Here's some quotes of the media coverage from this event. The Department of Natural Resources stated that they had no firm plan to invest in the repairs to the damage of the stone berm that protected the lake with dozens of homes next to the Atlantic Ocean. Further, the whole problem is climate change, rising waters, and increasingly violent storms, said Natural Resource Minister Margaret Miller. Should we be expected to protect those properties? Further quote, Natural Resource Minister Margaret Miller recently met with Big Lake residents and told them that they should take their concerns up over the berm with the Halifax Regional Municipality for allowing them to build their homes there. And finally, the last quote, Nova Scotia government did not have a plan to fix the berm. At that time, people in the area were told by the Department of Natural Resource officials to fortify their properties with protective walls, to put their homes on stilts, and seek coastal flooding insurance. Further than that, also reported in the media, rising sea levels are the biggest threat to Nova Scotia, according to a report commissioned by the provincial government called Adapting to Climate Change in Nova Scotia. The 2005 study presented a bleak scenario of what could happen in the province in the next 75 years. Some of the key points here that I want to speak to is more frequent and intense storms, storm surges that will likely inundate areas that have never before flooded. Also, at the time, reported in the media, setback increases. Mark Butler, policy director at the Ecology Action Center in Halifax, said he's been raising the alarm about rising sea levels and storms for years. Butler says he's traveled along the coastal communities around the province to tell them to be prepared for new stuff. Let's not build in exposed areas in an area where it's going to get hit in the next 10, 20 years. Let's start planning, said Butler. Let's start having adequate setbacks so that we're not leaving the next generation with infrastructure that we're going to have to pay to move. Before we approve a rezoning, HRM needs to clarify their commitment to the community, to the new residents that will potentially build homes in the P2 and the existing. The questions are, will HRM pay to protect any new homeowners or current homeowners when the rezoning area floods and creates environmental damages? Will HRM confirm that resident taxpayers will not have to be asked to increase taxes to cover the coastal erosion? Will HRM commit to hardening the remainder of Silver Sands Beach with an armored rock wall that will mitigate flooding and coastal erosion? To be clear, this presentation is not an anti-development. It is really about a responsible development. So what we're asking HRM is to postpone any decision to rezone or develop until there's been proper research. Commit to upholding the intent of the land use bylaw, and look at the development in the Cow Bay area at a holistic perspective that encourages responsible development and protects residents new and current, and also protects nature and environment. Here's a list of research that has been completed, which is definitely worth consideration for this rezoning.